I know in the book you had a lot of great characters, like from CJ to Kaden to Drew and Serena. So what really inspired these characters? Like, I know in the last interview you mentioned like some type of interviews you did to prepare for writing this book.
Absolutely. So all these stories are true stories
Okay.
based
Okay.
on those interviews. So all I did was really change the names to protect innocent and the guilty.
Okay. Yeah.
So, that's what for people opening themselves up and being, vulnerable and telling their stories, and, even some personal. So I'm in there as well. So I use character names to help to identify people's real names.
Okay. That's really cool. I really like some of the characters, to be honest. Like, I know over Instagram I mentioned I wish I was a little bit more like Channing. Particularly, I really resonated with whoever that person is or that character. I thought that was super cool. But just to move on, question number 2, I know you mentioned, let me see, in chapter 1 of the book of alpha females being genetically different, you mentioned the X factor gene. And so is that really the truth? Is that based on science, or can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. That was the main question of why them, why some women, not others, right? What is that gene that makes those women different? And so no one's, as far as I know of, have really ever explored that gene, be it men or women, for that matter, of why those particular types, stand out and become more of and are the alphas. So I just kind of arbitrarily gave it a name, but if the reason why I call it some sort of mutation or muted gene is because if you listen to society, and society says this is what women aren't supposed to be, right? And they kind of compare them to more of a more masculine train of thought, then it has to be something that puts them in that. There's some sort of mutation that actually creates that scenario. I'll put it that way. This is for the ones that are born that way.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good information to have. I never looked at it in those terms. But also, you also mentioned like the augmented 8 and the absolute 8. I know that you're probably an alpha female as well, correct?
I would say that's what most people would say, yes.
Okay. And so what do you consider yourself? Are you the one who was born an alpha female, an absolute 8, or are you more of an augmented 8?
Born an 8.
Okay.
Born an 8. So it even goes even with the birthday. I'm in the 8th month of the year.
Okay. Okay.
So, but I also have 2 other siblings who are female.
Uh-huh.
So, and they're very accomplished, both professional, but they're not me. We're very different in that perspective, right? But what I can see is that either it skips some generations, it hops some generations, so there's really no rhyme or reason. And that was where the book kind of questioned what skips generations or why certain ones and not others, right? Because your parents may not be alpha, but they may have an alpha female, or you may have 2 alpha parents that don't have an alpha female, and you're not sure why it happens in certain ones. Is it just a random generation of of genetics, or but you do find, at least in my family, I can say is that through history you can definitely point out the ones that you're definitely most like. So I have seen that alpha gene and authentic alpha gene crop up. But I was born this way.
That's good to know. That's really good to know. And so me, I would assume I'm more of a beta female. But however, like, is there some type of tool or quiz you can take to really figure out where you fall on the spectrum of being between beta and alpha? So,
there's a lot of what I would say the little fun quizzes out there that will say, if you test to see if you're alpha. Now, it's more of to me, personality type stuff, and people pick and choose, that kind of thing. I'm not sure if there's really an actual test, and that's why I say it's a gene, and that's why the book was done, because you see these blogs that have these heavy one-liners, but when you peel back that layer, those one-liners are those, what I call the little fun tests, are the ones that kind of put the misconception out there of what it is and what it really isn't, what they go through, whether they're born or not. And that's where I would say people know who they are, and you admit it, so it's good. So you say, look, I'm beta, I'm not that, and that's fine. Yeah, that's fine, right? There's no right or wrong. In the book, I say, women are strength no matter what, right? You have to, but you don't have to be alpha. If you're not alpha, that's fine. It's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that society says women are supposed to look like this, X, Y. And if you don't, or if you are assertive, or if you have these certain type of qualities, that, oh, there's something wrong. And it was time to dispel that myth, and they always present it in a negative light. Mm-hmm. So now this was saying, okay, let's unleash the minds. These women have been around since the beginning of time. They are the game changers. Here's the truth about some of those myths, but also let's set the record straight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very, very informative. And so that kind of brings me to my next question. Like, I know you talk about gender norms a lot and how societies view alpha females, but kind of looking at alphas as a whole, alpha females as well as alpha males, do you think there's some type of difference between the two, or is it just more, or is the only difference their sex or their gender?
For the most part, from an alpha standpoint, the alpha female is really like an alpha male mm-hmm. in a female body. Really, they move just alike. They mimic each other quite a bit. Mm-hmm. The only difference, society has always accepted that men should be alpha, right? Men should be tough. Men should be strong. You know, and you have a lot of men out there that will claim to be alpha that mm-hmm. aren't as well. They aren't alpha at all. So there's very few. So they mimic each other. Now, the one thing I believe that, and in the research that I've done, that has kind of, I think, freaked society out about these women is, and even from the man's standpoint, is that if she's truly that, right, she can compartmentalize like a guy, she kind of moves like a guy, from what society says is a guy, right? It's mm-hmm. more of a calculating train of thought. They're logical, very logical. Mm-hmm. The one thing the alpha female has up on an alpha male mm-hmm. is that she has all of his strengths but none of his weaknesses. And when I say that is because from a man's standpoint, somewhere along the line, even from the alpha side, you know, they're still kind of led by their Johnsons, by the way. You know? Whereas the female side, she knows that what she has and she knows how to use it, but she's mm-hmm. not led by it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like all a matter like of calculation, and it's part of a bigger plan, usually for the alpha female.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I would agree with that. And so out of all the characters, like I know you said they were based on preliminary interviews and such, which character do you identify with, if you don't mind sharing? Like if I had to guess, I would say maybe CJ. I don't know why. I feel like you're CJ in the book, but I don't know.
So I'll say this. There's parts of me in a lot of the characters throughout the book, right? Mm-hmm. But you guessed it right. If I had to pick one, just say to pick one that I would probably be the most like, mm-hmm. or that would probably most like me, would be CJ. Mm-hmm. But because you hit them in the storylines in different parts of their life, right? Mm-hmm. Some of them are younger, some of them are older, some of them are more matured. There are parts of me throughout each. I'll say that.
Okay, that's very interesting. And so chapter 4 talks about the dating game of alphas. Like we have Drew and Serena, then we have the other ladies who are dating certain named gentlemen. And so like I know in particular what stood out to me, how Serena set the tone for Drew because he wasn't initially kind of up to her expectation. And so in the dating game as a whole, do you think it's important for women to set the tone in relationships? If so, what are some ways of going about that?
You know, it's interesting. I was hanging out, just yesterday, just having a little fun day, and got into this conversation actually with a gentleman, mm-hmm. right, about that. And I would say in any relationship, it is not, I want to make it clear, when you say set the tone, it's not about control. Okay. So people automatically will say, well, a woman just trying to control everything. That's not it. But for any woman, I would say, or any person, that you should set the tone of expectation, because you want to set the tone on what the expectation is on how you are to be respected, treated, mm-hmm. valued. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, that can be devalued, right? Mm-hmm. And so in the book with Serena and Drew, the whole thing was, remember, Drew was the guy that, mm-hmm. he claimed himself to be a little bit more of an alpha type, right? Mm-hmm. And he was used to certain things, and all of a sudden he realized that, wait a minute, I kind of got to step up my game a little bit, with this woman I'm trying to date, and you see where he thinks he's alpha, but you see where he's not as alpha as he thinks, right?
Yeah, kind of falters a little bit.
Absolutely. And that story is probably one of the bigger stories of the book, because a lot of people don't believe that alpha females will go through what a Serena has gone through, mm-hmm. right? Where you can date a guy and what they love about you, they start to disdain, mm-hmm. to the point that it can get dangerous mm-hmm. and life-threatening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, I wasn't really expecting kind of, I don't want to give too much away for those who haven't read the book, but I wasn't expecting it to end the way it did. It seemed a little extreme, but it's like, I think really, in my opinion, Drew maybe kind of struggled with that power and that idea of control, because I feel like, you know, he couldn't control her, and so a lot of it kind of just went left field.
Absolutely. And that was what he was used of in his other relationships, right? And so, but now, again, what he was drawn to is a thing that he started to disdain, right? And so now, and that goes back to whether it's the male-female relationships or from an alpha-female, just even with friends or co-workers, right? You have a lot of people that's going to puff out their chest and claim to be alpha or claim to be a lot of things. But when you start to have the real ones come around, you'll see the ones that really aren't, right? It takes a very strong, I mean, it really does. It takes a strong person. So it's not saying that they are more, that they're better or worse or anything like that. It's really about the level of a person's insecurity. You start to see it comes out, right?
Yeah, definitely. And so that kind of brings me to my next question. Like, I know, well, let me know if I'm thinking about this correctly. And so, like, maintaining control and power of some sort seems to be the core of what alphas are, particularly alpha females. So do you think that's true? Before I ask my next sub question, do you think it's really about maintaining control for alpha females? Is that like the essence of their being?
So I talk about it, you know, closer to the end of the book about them being the addicts, right?
Yeah.
And so they can tell you what their addiction, exactly what their addiction is, and that addiction, you know, and that addiction is power. And a lot of people think it's control, but it's way bigger than control. They're not worried about the control as much. And so, and I think a lot of them don't realize it right away. So for me, the epiphany in writing this book was coming to that conclusion. That was one of the things that stood out, was what was that pattern that drives them all the time. The one thing that they all really had a like that drives them, and really and truly, it's an addiction. It's an addiction.
Yeah, and
for the as well, for the alpha male as well.
And so are there instances where, like, alphas as a whole, is there instances like where they lose their power or their sense of control? Like, because it seemed like in the book they're so calculated, they're so logical, they have everything mapped out. It seemed like they were very, very rarely lose that type of control that they seek to have. So are there instances of that where they just kind of like lose control?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Where, and I don't say lose control. Like I said, again, it's if they have and that's where they talk about the dark side, right? If they go into where there's a power imbalance for them. Now, remember, that's the power of their world, right? And if there's some sort of power imbalance there, whether it's career-wise, whether it is, you know, physical-wise, whether it, you know, one of the big ones, I think that's a big one that, you know, freaks them out too, you know, is death. That's the one thing that no one has control of. So that's big, you know, that's one, you know, you lose somebody really close to you, that's hard. You have no power over that whatsoever. So it's a rarity, but that's why I explain in the book of that dark side of what happens and what it does to them and how they have to get it back in some sort of way. Because when people think about that, they think about it from other people's perspective of them. For alphas, it's about their perspective of themselves, and no one has a higher standard for themselves than they do, right? And they only look at that respect maybe from another alpha.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of got that from the book. Like, I, again, don't want to give too much away, but I noticed, like, when you say they lose control in a different aspect of their life, in a separate aspect of their life, they really try to, you know, gain that control back, like by maybe, you know, getting the body of their dreams, etc., or buy an expensive car that no one else can afford. And so, yeah, I think that's critical.
Absolutely. You're gonna get that. You're gonna get that power back. And again, it's their world. So it's not about what you're comparing to social media. It's not what they're comparing to others. Remember, it's their self-definition. So it's a weird dynamic for them, because of where a lot of people, where most people always, again, the insecurity of, well, what are people going to say about me? What are people going to think about me? For them, it's about themselves. You know, it's kind of themselves, their own measurement of success, their own measurement of that state of power, their own measurement of their world being in the fashion that they expect it to be in. Now, the only time they will take that, I will say, not say comparison or take the feedback, would be probably from another male or female that they respect, because that's the only person that's going to understand what they're going through. And I don't know if you caught it, but the foreword of the book is written by an alpha male.
Yeah, I think that's really a strength to have, is to really have a mindset to where only people you respect or yourself is the standard of what you should be aiming towards. Because I think what a lot of people, we get kind of, or people in general get sidetracked of thinking about what that person may think or what the next person may think. But I really like the mindset of an alpha in regards to that.
Absolutely.
Cool.
You know, and it has this double-edged sword because, again, it can be their own worst enemy.
Yeah. yeah. And so have you seen Being Mary Jane?
I have, I've seen bits and pieces. I've caught like 1 or 2 episodes of that.
Okay. Yes, because I just want to ask you your opinion. Do you think Mary Jane is an alpha female because she's like very successful, she's aggressive in her career, she takes control, and things of that sort?
I saw, there was one episode I saw of that, and it was funny because it was her and I think a friend of hers or a coworker, and the girl was crying, and she was reminding her and saying, "You can't show emotion."
Yeah.
You cannot show emotion here. And she was talking about on the job, and you could tell they were good friends or what have you. And I forgot what all had happened, and finally, she backs down from her. She says, "You know what? Show all the emotion you want." So I think that's what they try to portray her. I can tell you the 2 shows that I've watched probably the most where I think, and I love, don't get me wrong, I love Shonda Rhimes. I mean, I would love for Shonda Rhimes to pick this up, right, and for this to go Netflix. Is Olivia Pope.
Oh yeah, she is great.
And then you have Annalise Keaton for How to Get Away with Murder. So the real Judy Smith, I've seen. I don't know her personally. Kind of seen up there. I think she's definitely more on the alpha side. Now the Olivia Pope's character was not alpha. Okay. She wasn't. They tried to make her that. She wasn't. Her mom and her dad were.
Okay.
They were sociopathic side of it, right?
Yeah, they said yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Those guys were, straight up. But her parents were. And you notice they kind of tried to make her be that, but that's really not what she was. She was a fixture. She's kind of this adjusted alpha, right? She was kind of augmented. She kind of had a persona. But if you notice, she got played a lot. She succumbed to a lot. But on the other side of that, you take the Annalise Keaton character, right? Viola Davis, which I love the show, How to Get Away with Murder.
Yeah.
Her perfect life is jacked. But at the end of the day, her top thing is power. She has all the power in that, and she is that alpha. She is the epitome of an alpha female, right? She is it. She's calculating, and every time she makes a move, right when she has you on her side, you're like, wow, and all of a sudden you're like, God, I can't believe she did that. She's cold. Yeah. And all of a sudden it turns back around, and all of a sudden you're thinking, right when you're getting ready to dismiss her a little bit and write her off, then all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, well, this is why she did what she did. She's really protecting those, So you kind of back off on it. So she's really that's really the character. I compared it to.
Yeah, Olivia Pope to me she was a beast. But yeah, there was like times like within Scandal where she kind of faltered or like you said got played as a result of certain situations. But I kind of my next question, like I know alpha females or alpha males aren't necessarily traditional. Like they're not really into abiding by tradition. They're more into being expressive and creating whatever that life they want for themselves. And so are alpha females particularly religious? Like where do they fall with spirituality?
Spiritual, they have the spirituality, but they don't have to conform to religious norms. So they respect. I think they respect religion, but they don't fall into the religious norm. And when I say religious norms, is that they're still going to live their life. They're not going to let the religious side dictate their spirituality and how they live their life. Whereas some people do, and this is what's called out in the book because it gets talked about where some are raised by Southern Baptist parents, right? That are expected that women have a certain role, a certain place. You're not supposed to be these things. And in doing the interviews, I mean, really and truly, this is where one of those stories come from where the parent pretty much tried to abuse the alphaness out of her.
Yeah.
And he was a preacher. And so you're not going to change that. They're not. They're not going to change. And so they are, and that's why they trailblazers. These are the people that you see that have set the bar, have created policies, have broken those social norms through the course of time.
Yep, that's definitely true. And so, like, from the book, I learned, alpha females, they're very successful. They're strategic. They're calculating. They have high libidos. They take control of their life. They're just always, know what their next move is before they make that move. And so it seemed like our alpha females always successful? Are those traits that you describe or ascribe to alpha females, can beta females like have some of those traits as well? Because it seems like when you think of alpha females, you think of success. It seems like they go hand in hand.
You know, and I would say success, and remember, success, you know, is defined differently for everyone. So from them, right, they have a definition of what the success looks like for them. Beta females, absolutely. There are different aspects and different traits a lot of beta females will have. The main thing is, and the one question I get more than anything else, and that's coming up from the next topic, workshops, even the next book, is how to unleash that alpha within them. Because you have certain traits. Sometimes they're scared of it, on how to use it, or they're so used to hearing how the alphas are treated or how they're talked about, right, for being that. All of a sudden they're saying, I don't want to be judged, and that's the insecurity. Alpha females are saying, I don't really give a crap if you judge me or not, right? I don't care. You're going to judge me, but I'm going to do what I have to do, and all of a sudden you're going to be trying to follow footsteps. That's the way they think about it, right? I'm not going to worry about what you say. You're talking about me anyway, so what, right? You're going to love me, you're going to love me, you're going to hate me, so what? Whereas others are scared to. So that was a number one. That is like the number one question through the course of interviews with women was, what if I have some of this? How do I utilize that? How do I utilize that in my career? How do I utilize that in life? And so the Sandberg, you know, Sheryl Sandberg did the book Lean In, which is exactly what she was trying to talk about not being afraid to have a seat at the table. You know, females don't usually have that problem. They usually have, you know, one of leaning back. Leaning back a little bit. So yes, beta females, no doubt about it. There's plenty of them that have a lot of these keen traits. And a lot of beta females are successful. So don't ever get it twisted. You know, a lot of beta females are very successful, have very great, you know, great professions, great jobs, highly successful. And I want to make sure that people understand that just because a woman is an executive or has a powerful position doesn't make her alpha. Okay. They're very different, right? They're very different. So, but most alpha females will have a powerful position. The majority of the time. You won't stand for anything less.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to really understand and differentiate, you know, because like I know, like you said, like it doesn't necessarily mean that you're alpha or beta. You could be very successful, have those high status positions, but like you said, there are a lot of times those women are alphas and things of that sort. And so that kind of brings me to my next question, like in regards to like temperament and how people respond to the world. So are alphas necessarily more extroverted as opposed to being introverted, or what is your take on that?
So it's weird. It's a weird dynamic for alphas. And it's funny in talking to some of the ones, especially I know that I say the die-hard born hardcore alpha females that I know, even some that are older than me. We all had you all come to the same conclusion. You keep hearing the same stories. It's almost they're a closet introvert. So they're extroverts, but they're actually closet introverts. So they can be social, but they actually like to be, you know, secluded. But they know how to be social to execute a plan. They know how to be social to be connected. They know how to be social to be the power player. They know how to be social. So they can have the social, they have the friends, but they have a very close-knit set of friends. They're not going to have a big circle of true friends, right? That, because their time is valuable, their energy is valuable, and it's just from the trust and the confidentiality of it all. So they have a very small circle of trust. It's how they operate. It's how they operate. So yeah, so they have extroverts. Most time people will think they're extroverts because they're out there. They see them out there. They're into a lot of things. They're on tons of boards. You know, they're always speaking. But a lot of times they like their downtime, and a lot of times they will take trips by themselves. They will, you know, be secluded. They have their own downtime. So it's a real interesting dynamic. I'll call them more of the closet introvert.
Yeah, that's very informative, because like you said, you would assume that they're extroverted, but like again, to me it's just really about strategy, like their larger strategy of having certain relationships, strategic partnerships and relationships. It's all part of like their grand plan of like, you know, maintaining power and control and, you know, meeting whatever their standards are.
Absolutely, and you know, and it's interesting because for them, and I'll say this from the ones that are authentic and born that way, the way their mind calculates, it's like breathing. It doesn't turn off. So it's not something they actually do necessarily. I would say they do it purposefully, but yet they don't, because it's literally the way they're wired. Yeah, it's literally the way they're wired. So it's as normal as breathing, and you can see it. I've seen it on some younger kids around 3-4 years old, 2 years old. You can watch them. And you'll see it. You'll see it come out, and you'll see them the way they play with others. You'll see what kids gravitate toward them. Really, you'll see the kids, the one that's leaving the room. That's leaving the room at 2 and 3 years old, and they're like, "Well, why is every kid following, you know, that kid, and what they'll say is that, oh, she's bossy. Well, no, she's not bossy. She's just boss status. She knows, and the kids follow along. It's like the Pied Piper type deal. So they're the ones that are born that way. And again, the augmented ones, they will have the same look and feel. They're just not hardwired that way. And how you start to tell the difference, one, in the interviews, people knew. They'll say, I really wasn't born this way, but something happened. Or my mom or my dad, are showing this, or this situation put me in a situation where I had to step it up. And that's fine. In some ways, they have a leg up because they're easier to adjust on some of their internal values and internal wiring. They can adjust it more. For the born alphas, it's their hardcore beliefs. So it's hard to change their beliefs, right? So
that's their identity.
Absolutely, it's their identity. It's literally their identity.
Yeah, that's great. And so my next question, you kind of briefly touched on this in this interview as well as I believe the past interview. Like you say, alpha females or alpha as a whole, just to generalize it, they have emotions but are not emotional. So like, what really is the difference? Because to me, it's like really I know it's probably like a fine line between having emotions and not being emotional. But so how would you really elaborate on that?
So when you talk about, in this day and age, you're talking about a lot of times the emotional IQ. They'll have a lot more of the higher emotional IQ. So when I say they have emotions, they have emotions. They're not completely unfeeling, but most people will think so because they keep a poker face. Most of the time, it's a calm exterior. Or if they do show it, they know what they're showing and they know how they're showing it. So it's a calculated showing, right? Very calculated. They're going to know when they're flashing certain things to get people to move in a certain way. But they're not emotional, whereas most people lose the cool and get hysterical. They're the ones most time that's keeping the cool head. Now, they may be freaking out on the inside, but they're not going to show it, right? So, and when I say from a female, think about it from a man's perspective, or society shows a guy, right? Most of the time, they always tell boys you can't cry, or men aren't supposed to show much emotion. So they kind of move in that direction, which from a female's perspective, because people are expecting females to always break down, cry, to show a little bit of a quote unquote weaker side or vulnerable side. They don't. Their exterior is pretty much even, it's even keel, and it is, I'll say it this way. They can show the emotions with the fear in God in you and still basically barely crack a smile, and it may come with a smirk. It may come with a very calm voice. So calm to where it may freak you out a little bit more. Those are the times you may want to run.
Yeah. But again, I kind of really drawed upon what we already talked about. I think it's a part of, like you said, their hardwiring, but it really, to me, it's like they're strategic. And so, like, they don't really show weaknesses. Like you said, the only weakness they have is their addiction to power. And so anytime they're all vulnerable, it's like with their inner circles. I mean, like, every move they make to me is, like, very strategic and calculated. And so that will make sense why they have emotions but are not, emotional.
Absolutely. You get accused of, and I'll say this from my perspective, my family has always accused me or have always said, you're always in business mode. You're always in business mode. You're always in business mode. And I'm like, for me, I always approach it business or personal. If my sisters have, or there's something that happens in the family, okay, let's deal with it. What's going on? What's the story? Let's figure this out. Let's deal with it. And then we move on, right? And move on. And so stop dwelling in that same space, or stop dwelling on certain things. Let's fix it. Let's take care of it. So it's one of those things to where, and again, obviously from an alpha female standpoint, we had a death in the family about a year and a half ago, a big one. And and for me that was a tough one. I'm the oldest, so whereas then again that's one that you can't solve. That's one that you can't solve, and you try to fix it, but you can't fix it. So that puts you in a slightly different space. It really does.
Yeah, definitely. And so in chapter 6, you really brought up a great point that kind of stood out to me. It's kind of like in reference to dating, in reference to men. Like I noticed that you said that alpha females want a man that's complementary, not supplementary. And so can you elaborate on that idea, on that concept?
Sure. In this day and age, a lot of times, and again, social media and, a lot of hype and the gimmick stuff that goes on. A lot of people are looking for somebody to take care of them, right?
Yeah. Secure the
girls
bag.
want a sugar daddy, and the guys these days want a sugar mama. Everybody's looking for the get over. So the main thing about these alpha females, they're not looking. They have their own, right? They're doing their own thing. They have their own lives. They have their own money. They have their own homes. They have their own car. There's really not much from a lifestyle that someone is, they're looking for somebody to supplement, I'll say it.
Okay.
Or I will say from an insecurity needing to supplement. What they are looking for, I'll say, and not say looking, but what they do want is the guy that's going to complement them. In other words, it having you by their side. I mean, having the guy, the great guy, the alpha guy, or what I said, the strong beta man by their side, is one that truly complements, and I will say that it's not filling the gap to make them complete, but it's complementing them to where they partner and make good partnerships together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. So again, it's complementing the parts of her life, but it's not having to quote unquote complete her life.
Yeah, that's really a great concept, because like even for me, like I would definitely want a guy that's complementary, because I want to provide for myself, be successful on my own. Like I don't want someone to give that to me, and so that kind of really makes sense as in comparison being complementary versus supplementary. But I never really thought about it in those terms. But like I knew deep inside that's like what I wanted, and so that's really a really good point.
Absolutely, it's about it's about the luxury, right? It's about you're looking at that significant other, that guy, as a complement luxury that's adding value. It's not having to fix you.
Exactly.
It's not having to make you complete. And I think a lot of people in this day and age, both men and women, are looking for somebody to complete them, right?
Yeah.
They're looking for somebody to fill that gap, to fill that void, to fill that need, whatever that is. And so when these people are secure within themselves, they're not looking for somebody to help them be more secure with who they are. They're saying, okay, this is fine. We're going to get it. We're going to get it together, right? You're another piece of the, you're another piece in the life. Great. And, let's make sure we keep the ball rolling. That's kind of how they look at it. And sometimes, I'm not going to say it's always the best way to look at things, but a lot of times they look at relationships like it's another business deal for them. It is. It is kind of a business deal. They weigh the pros and cons, assets, liabilities.
Credit score.
Yeah, the credit. You know what? That's the first thing. Credit score. They're these women. When they say women ask the right questions, it was funny. I saw a guy was preaching to women on social media about making sure you know the guy that you're with, and he was saying women ask enough questions. And I said, well, heck, I do. I said, but it depends on the questions you ask, right? And women have to be okay with hearing the truth. Men have to be okay with telling the truth. And so, listen to the truth, they'll tell you. But most, some women may ask, a few questions like, what do you do, or whatever. No, okay, yeah, I'm asking, how many kids you have, how many baby mamas you have. Because in an alpha female standpoint, she's trying to figure out, are you paying alimony? Are you paying child support? What's your credit real like? Can we even afford to go out? That kind of stuff. Really true. So that's the business side, the logical business side of it. Really is what she really, and how much drama, because they don't do drama.
Yeah.
So they're not about to get into the whole dramatic scene, and that's just not who they are. It's not who.
Yeah. Yeah, from that standpoint, I definitely have some alpha traits in, because I exactly think of relationships kind of like that. But do you think, think of relationships from that type of business transaction mindset? Do you think if the relationship was to deteriorate, do you think they're less likely to be, devastated by it than if they was looking for someone to supplement them?
I think it depends on how much you end up caring about the person, right? But again, when the calculation mindset steps in, I think is a thing that allows them to be able to be okay to walk away. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like anything else. They do have some feelings. There's the love factor in there, but they will, most of the time, they're not going to let the heart overrule the mind. And if it does, they'll quickly start to make that adjustment, especially if they start seeing it being more detrimental. To absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so in chapter 6, we also meet the character of Campbell. She's kind of described as this queen pin. And so from your perspective as being the writer of the book, what qualifies women the title of a queen pin? Because that seemed like such a powerful type of position to be in.
Absolutely. So the queen pins, and within that same chapter, in that same part, I call them queen pins because I call them mob bosses. They're like mob bosses. They're the bosses. If you ever notice these women, they have their own sub-families. They have their own subset of friends, their own circles, their own network, right? And they are the ones that call the shots in that. Whether people realize it or not. Now, they may not, and the funny part is that most people may not even realize they're calling the shots, but they are. So that's that power side, right? Other people may feel like they have control, Okay, fine, you have control, but they're the ones that's really maneuvering the control side.
The
right?
puppet
So that's the power
master.
side. Absolutely, absolutely. And so they are. And so what happens is that, but they also take care of the people that's in that circle. They take care of it. And there's a standard of having to maintain that circle, right? So, and the big thing is confidentiality and loyalty. So loyalty is big for them, you know, for Alpha, you know, and I even saw it reiterated again on a different show. Alpha personalities inherently, or I'll say alpha people, demand loyalty.
Yeah.
It is a requirement, and there's no excuse for it. And once you try to step out of that zone and you break that loyalty, I tell you what, there's hardly any coming back for you. Yeah, and then you're on that other side of the hit list, so to speak. You know, it is. I mean, and that is. And so, but then when you see the alphas of all those families get together, and I call it the Queen Pin Summit, right? You may see these powerful women come together, and they'll do lunch. You know, they may go on a trip together because it's not that many. You know, I'll say authentic ones. Most people may see them sit down at dinner. You may see them sitting down. You know, they may fly out and hang out on a beach somewhere. You know, and they're having fun, but trust me, this is being done as well. This is being done as well. It's behind the scenes stuff that's being taken care of there. You know, what's going on, you know, because again, a lot of times these people are connected, they're connected to each other, so they know who the connections are. And so that's why, you know, they become that like I said, the puppet master. You hate to say it because it sounds cold and it sounds manipulative. They just more or less use it more for influence. A lot of times they'll use it for the greater good. Now, you do have some on the more psychotic side that are more selfish. They'll use it for their own personal gain, but a lot of times it is for the common good. Because they take care of the family, they take care of their circle. They're very protective. They're very protective.
Okay. Yeah, and so I want to quote you on this part. So in the final chapter, Expose and Unleash, the audience learned, you know, again about the addiction of power. And so, but in the book it says on page 134, hidden among Alpha Nation resides one of their darkest collective secrets, addiction. Most of them do not realize they're addicts for a good portion of their lives, which you talked about. Non-recognition of this weakness lends itself to always being top performers, leading in various aspects of their lives. And so I kind of want to know, why do you refer to their addiction as kind of a potential weakness or as a weakness? Because from my perspective, I really see it as one of their core strengths, because from that addiction of power, their accomplishments come. From like that addiction of power, they're able to control their situation strategically to get the greatest goal of whatever their objective is. And so like kind of why is it like referred to as a weakness?
If you don't recognize that's what it is, that's where it becomes a weakness. Because you're not sure of what your bigger purpose is, right? And what happens is that the thing that's driving you, it's kind of the thing that's making you is also breaking you. Because now it's like any other person. You're chasing something, right? And you're going to get something. Now, the question is, it's not only that you're getting it and achieving it, it's also the how, right? And so if that addiction is so strong and you don't even recognize that's really what the addiction is, right? Then you have no power over it. Okay. So which means it's controlling you, which means now you're going to do any and everything to get it, which means now it may be costing you a lot more than what you actually gain. So, and that happens sometimes because what people see, again, what people see is, hey man, you know, this person has a nice home, this person has a nice car, this person has some nice stuff, this person. Now the question is, how did they get it? And with how you got it is always how you have to maintain it. Because behind the scenes, they may be strictly miserable because of the upkeep, right? And that becomes the weakness side, because now that's controlling you. You're not controlling it. It has power over you. You don't have power over it.
Yeah, that's a really powerful statement. If however you got it is how you have to maintain it. That's really informative to kind of realize. 'Cause I don't think people realize that. It's like they don't really see always the end result of certain decisions that they make.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and I learned that a long time ago, just even from my parents. So, you know, and especially being in corporate America, and I'll be honest with you, you know, it's one of those things, both men and women. And a lot of people don't realize this in corporate America, and me being in boardrooms, you know, still.
Yeah.
And it's funny, and I have this conversation with peers. I have this conversation with my mentees, especially the younger ones coming up. How you get, especially from a woman's standpoint, because women are, you know, you have the Me Too movements happening now. have a lot of, the equal pay trying to happen now. But I've been in situations, and I'll say this, that I've seen situations where both men and women, they think you're going to get it on your knees or on your back. Well, you can, but but what they don't realize, you never get off your knees and you're never off your back. And it does not matter what title comes with it. It doesn't matter what title comes with it. So if you got to being a director or a VP or president on your knees, you're just a president of on your knees or on your back. Yeah. And so a lot of people believe that once they get to that point, they don't have to do that anymore. And I'm here to tell you, it's not. So whatever you do to get it, you have to maintain it. And this is where I will say the non-alphas, you'll see this come up. The non-alphas, both men and women, would definitely come apart because that's where they get compromised probably a lot more. They get compromised a lot more. It's a big, right? You can poke at their weakness and exploit it. So a lot of times when people think they're getting exposure, you have to be careful when you're getting exposure and when you're actually being exposed. Very different what you're being exposed on. So it's very interesting, a very interesting dynamic to watch.
Yeah, that's very informative. I really like that concept. And so now approaching one of my final questions, or actually my final question is, I know you're going to have a next segment called Unleashing the Alpha Within You. And it talks about to discover how to utilize your inner alpha. So what can you tell us, a little bit more about that next segment coming up?
Absolutely. One, you'll probably start seeing that come up with different events I'm doing coming up. But also have already thinking about it as a sequel for another book as well. I would hope to that one. I would love to get more alphas and make that one a bigger collaborative one, get different perspectives on. It may or may not work out that way, but for sure on the workshop side or speaking and engagement side, it's really allowing women, and I do it kind of on the side anyway, even, corporate America and stuff I do on my own from a motivational speaking standpoint, but it's really having this conversation with, it's okay to have that seat at the table. It's okay to know what you want and to say, this is what I want, right? And it's okay to be assertive. So people will confuse assertive with aggressive, right? They won't say she's assertive, they'll say she's aggressive. Well, no, not necessarily. Aggressive sounds more angry, but she's assertive. And if a woman doesn't know what she wants, it's like, why doesn't she know? Well, wait a minute. She knows what she wants. She's not afraid to go out and get it. Got it. And be happy with that, and don't let anybody make you feel less or make you feel ashamed that you do. And this is why, again, the book is done, because if you choose your career over having kids, that's fine. If you choose your career over marriage, if that's what you want, that's fine. It may not be that it's you don't want it, and maybe you don't. It's just not as high on the priority list for you, and that's okay. Who says that getting married and having kids has to be the number one priority for women? That's a society thing. I have yet to see that. I'm not the most biblical person. I read it, but I have yet to come across that in any scripture that has to be number one, number two on every woman's list, right? I have yet to see it. If somebody wants to point it out, so be it. So, but somewhere along the line, society has made women feel that way, right? If you don't go to college or go and you're not married by a certain age, or you don't have kids by a certain age, or what have you, then you're less of. Well, no, that's not necessarily true. That's not true at all. So, so it's having that conversation and getting women to understand and saying, okay, embrace those qualities, know what you want. It's okay to have a plan. It's okay that, guess what, this guy, he may be a part of your plan, but he doesn't have to be the plan, right? It's complementary, but he's not supplementary.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think women definitely get put in this position to where they have to abide by all of these societal timelines, okay, like, in regards to getting married. And having kids, and so I'm glad that you kind of really debunk some of that in the book. I think that's very important. And so my final question is there anything else that you'd like to add or bring up that I haven't maybe asked so far in this interview?
Well, I was going to ask you, overall, what did you think about it? Did it help you in any way? Which I'm hoping that it helps open minds and gives people, a different perspective of what they thought it was before. And, opening to what she really is, what she really isn't. She is somewhat human. What did you really think about it? I think I want to hear the feedback from the readers.
And so what I thought when I first was reading it, to be honest, I wasn't really quite into the content, but as I kept reading, the content really picked up for me, and I start to understand certain concepts, like about the dating game of men should be complementary, not supplementary. And so I think you had some really great points in the book that really caused me to think of things in a different way that I have not thought of them before. And also really gave me a better holistic and more accurate understanding of what an alpha female is. Because initially some of my thoughts was, well, she's domineering, she's aggressive, she's nasty, she's going to get whatever she has to get, however she has to get it. But really reading this book kind of really provided that context of who she is exactly and how strategic she is and how she really calculates every move to ultimately work together for this greater plan, whatever that goal may be.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you probably have alpha females in your family or friends that you can read in the book and say, oh, I know who that is. Sounds like, my friend so and so. I mean, the one thing I definitely want to address here as well, and I'm surprised you didn't ask that question, but the one question I used to get is that, can you really what happens when you pit two alpha females against each other? Mm-hmm. And that question gets asked quite a bit. If they're really true born alphas, you're not gonna get them to battle like that. Mm-hmm. You're not. They're gonna go into collusion. Mm-hmm. They're gonna go into collusion. They're gonna team up on you. Yeah. They're gonna recognize what it is. They're gonna recognize that they're gonna recognize that game. That you're trying to pit one against the other. And there's a mutual respect there. Where it falls apart, and I talked about in the book, where it falls apart is where you have one claiming to be alpha, and you have one that's really alpha. Both considered alpha, and one probably isn't. The one that falters first is the one that is, and you will see it. And it's the dynamic is just so interesting, and it may not show up right away, but as the stakes get raised and the pressure gets higher, that's how you see it. Alphas, be it man or woman, have a very because their insecurity threshold is so low, their self-preservation threshold is high, which means it takes a lot for them to go in that self-preservation mode, right? Before it's all about them, like, kill or be killed type deal. Now, when alpha female does reach that threshold, watch out, it's like an atomic bomb, because she'll blast everything within a certain radius, and she'll wipe it clean. Now, that's the wrath is strong, but it takes them a minute to get there because they're not that easily shaken. You're not going to get them shaken in their boots like that. So I appreciate it. I definitely want people to get out there and read it more. I really want people to men and women alike, every race, creed, or color, because it all went into every race, creed, and color that went into this book. Every religion, every every aspect of society went into the book. To definitely submit reviews on Amazon or on the Facebook page or what have you.
Yeah, I would do that.
Reviews. Absolutely, because I'm posting and I'm posting people's reviews about it, whether it's good, bad, and different. If it's not your cup of tea, say it's not your cup of tea. Say it's why, but at least say what you got out of it, right? Because all this is about owning your truths. That was a big part about this: owning the truths, good, bad, or indifferent. Really.
Yep, definitely. And so, yeah, it was, again, really great talking to you, Miss CC Lyon. I think the book was great. I'm definitely going to leave that review, and I'm going to tell Jimmy to do the same thing if she hasn't done that already.
Oh, absolutely. Like I say, definitely recommend it to your friends.
Yes, for sure.
Definitely hit me up if you guys want to do, like I said, a bigger session. Definitely let me know. I'm watching you guys out there. You guys are growing by leaps and bounds. Definitely going to see more from you. You guys are doing a great job, so keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too now.